And I was like looking out over the water, and I see this like circling light through the dark, just like it came, kept going around and around. I'm like, no way. At the moment that I feel like, this is where my story ends and this new chapter begins, I see this lighthouse in the distance, and it's very symbolic for me. And then also I just think of, a ship trying to come to harbor. This is what worked for me. And so it can be that guiding post and guide light for others that are navigating turbulent waters.
Here we go. Okay. So this is probably one of the most difficult people I've ever had to interview ever. My guest today is so hard to work with. I'm joking completely. Kristin is here with me, Kristin Birdwell. She is an author, and she is like super famous. Can we say that?
Sure, we could say that, right? Maybe I'm on my way. I don't know if I'd call it super famous, but
is anybody fact checking this podcast? Nobody's fact checking. We can say anything we want.
There we go. All right.
Super famous. Kristin Birdwell is here. Kristin is an author. She wrote a book, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. You left out the rock and roll and added in the soul. That's great.
My version. This is my version.
Right? Yeah. So welcome to the podcast, Kristin. Nice to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. I'm honored to be here. Happy to share my story and connect with you, connect with new people.
So let's insert this fact right from the beginning. You are not difficult to work with. You were gracious with your time, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want people to have a good experience at the beginning of the podcast. So like, wait a minute, what's going to happen? No, everything's good.
There's drama coming.
There's drama.
There's a lot of drama coming around the corner.
Okay, so let's
stay tuned.
Hook the people with that. I love this. This is great. Kristin, why? Okay, first of all, where are you in the world? Let's do that first, so everybody can see hear where you are. Where are you?
Today, I am in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
For the next few days, yeah. I'm gonna go to Spain in a few days, but currently Austin.
Spain.
Yeah. Adventure calls.
Nice. Awesome. That's amazing. Have you been there before?
Mm-hmm. No, never. So I want to eat all the tapas and see the architecture and be by the beach and I'll do all the things.
I interviewed an author last week, and she lives in Spain. And she says, after this interview, I'm going down to swim in the ocean. And I'm like, who says that on a regular basis? Like, she's like, yeah, I can just walk there. It's just like a short walk from my house. Anyway, it sounds like a beautiful place. I hope you have an amazing trip.
Thank you.
Sounds like a gorgeous place to visit. Okay, so tell us about this book. Why did you write a book, first of all? And what's the book about? Give us a little insight into the book.
Yeah, why I wrote a book. I would say listening to the inner longing, like there's so much pain in not writing the book or listening to myself that finally one day the pain of pursuit and writing a book outweighed the pain and procrastination and delaying it. Yeah. I have always wanted to write a book, probably in particular memoir since 22, but I had to live the journey and go for the ride. The book, The External Journey, is about 21-year-old me showing up on the doorstep of this older sugar daddy and kind of subconsciously thinking that it was going to be a fairy tale, going on this wild ride through like grief and abuse. And I ultimately land across the seat from a detective in an attempted murder for hire investigation. So one of the gentlemen that I was interested in attempted to hire a hitman, and I had to start asking myself some questions. Then that's whenever I was like, okay, what's the common denominator here between my attraction to all these unavailable men, me? What is unavailable in myself? So I had to strengthen the relationship and connection to myself. So it shot me on this like spiritual journey. At the time, I was still seeking all of the answers outside of myself. So it's really the internal journey is about the shift and the journey to finding love and acceptance for myself instead of seeking all of that love, validation, all those things externally.
Whoa. Okay.
So
So are you like living in a movie? Like this sounds
yeah.
like something that somebody wrote for you. Like, how does this happen?
Yeah, yeah. A friend of mine once told me, she's like, Kristin, I think you attract characters into your life. And I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe subconsciously I manifested some crazy stuff in my life, kind of thinking that or knowing that it would all make a good story. And I've always been about living a great story, and however it turned out, it would be a good story. And so just kind of knowing that, yeah, maybe there's something to that, but that's definitely a dramatic moment. I'm hoping for it to be made into a movie or a series. That would be really cool. Um,
Okay, so I have to ask now, though, you're sitting
mhm,
across the table from a detective.
mhm.
Like, at some point, did you sit there and go, okay, now how did I end up here? I'm freaking out. Like what, like where's your
Yeah,
headspace in that situation?
yeah,
I can't imagine being sitting there.
yeah. It was kind of like I remember kind of viewing it from this bird's eye view, like, oh, I cannot believe this is happening right now. Is this happening? This is happening. Oh my God. And like really a reckoning with myself, because I'm like, oh wow, a lot of people are, you know, people could have been hurt more intensely, or physically. And so it just kind of like I had to like meet myself where I was at and ask myself questions like, why am I attracted to someone that's capable of something, of doing something so evil? Does that make me evil? There's a lot of like questions. How do I want to live? This is not the kind of relationship that I want to be in. How do I shift this? Yeah. So
Yeah.
there were, and like a lot of fear and anxiety. um, yeah. I remember, after that interview, laying awake in my bedroom and being just like my heart was racing and I was tears and not just for myself, but also like stepping into the shoes for the person that, the hitman was attempted to hire for, like that woman, um, which was this man's wife that I was seeing. And so it was like this, I had a lot of empathy for her. And like I'm like, if I feel this way, I can only imagine how she feels. So yeah, just a soul reckoning, a dark night of the soul.
Mhm. So let's go back to 21-year-old Kristin and like tell me a little bit about her.
Yeah, she loves adventure and good stories to tell. And I would say like the biggest thing that put her on the doorstep of that decades older sugar daddy was a call for adventure. And she liked older men anyway. And so it just seemed like a natural fit that this older man could potentially sponsor adventure or bring stories. And I didn't realize like how deep my conditioning was at the time to like have this, paint this picture of this man coming into my life like a rescuer
Mhm.
and like the Disney movies,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like saving and living this like wild, happily ever after type of story. But that didn't happen.
So no, so like at 21, are you like bulletproof? Like nothing's gonna happen. Like I'm fine. I can take care of
Mm,
myself or
more naive,
naive.
more
Okay.
naive. Yeah. Like just believe the good would happen. Like, yes, I trusted myself to take care of myself. But yeah, I just kind of, let's see what happens. I'm spontaneous. I'm 21. I think I maybe felt older than 21 at the time, but also a part of me realized that I was only 21.
Yeah.
And so let's make some mistakes. Let's live
Yeah.
a little.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So uh tell me a little bit about like your community, your family, your friends, and all of this.
Mm,
Where were they?
yeah.
Were they throwing up caution flags? Were they like tell me how did that dynamic play out through all of this as
Mhm.
well?
Yeah, well, I wasn't as open to some of them. Like, so if I communicated to my mom or my stepdad or my dad, like how I met this guy or or that I was very secretive in that way. So there was not much that they could have warned me about in that aspect. And I don't know if I would have listened to them anyway.
Yeah.
As far as like friend circle, like I definitely leaned on my friend that was the one that was most likely going to entice me or encourage me to do this, maybe somewhat scandalous decision. And yeah, so I kind of leaned in, and he actually went with me. My best gay guy friend went with me to meet the guy. And so I was like, hey, it's 2009. So it wasn't like this app swiping era.
Yeah.
Today. It was more of like, I was like, okay, shoot, the internet's becoming more of like the coffee shop and like facilitating these connections, but you can also double as a witness in case I need one, and like provide this, moral support in a way.
So you had some sort of a safety net.
Yeah.
But really you're living life, what most people would say, without a safety net.
Yeah.
Really, from the outside looking in, you'd be like, what is she doing? Where is she going? How does she trust these people? That kind of thing. Right. So,
yeah.
What is maybe something you learned looking back now, bird's eye view, like you talked about in the detective, what's your bird's eye view looking back now? Like, what would you have said to 21-year-old Kristin as she steps out of the house on this adventure? Was there any words you'd give her?
That's so interesting or difficult to answer, because there's a part of me that says like every step led to where I am today.
Yep.
So I had to and like, I like who I am today. I love who I am today. So would I be where I am today if there was a cautionary whisper in her ear? Yep. I don't know. But then there is like, part of me that's been like, okay, maybe not be so naive, but then the story probably wouldn't have unfolded like it did. So yeah.
Well, the beauty of all of this is that we're talking today. So there was a point where maybe things weren't as great, but you've made it through. You have a story to tell, right? So you've written a book. So I was like asking authors, who is this book for? Like, who's the audience, and why would this book be important to them to read?
So I kind of see this book as written for a younger version of myself that, seeking love, acceptance, validation outside yourself. If you struggle with people pleasing or, want to strengthen the connection to yourself, you can go on the ride and the journey, and that'll help maybe lay out some steps for you. Anyone that, like, I was very curious. So if you're curious and want answers and, to dive into some of the spiritual or plant medicines that I tried along the way as well, it definitely gives you insight into that journey too.
Okay. All right. So I love that a book can also be a calling card, a business card. It can open doors for you. For you personally, what are you hoping this book opens for you in the future as far as opportunity now that you have a book?
Yeah, I went to Costa Rica in the beginning of 2021. It was like right after the manuscript was done, and had this visualization of like helping other people bring their stories into the world. And I got full body chills, started crying. I'm like, okay, this is the feeling that I need to follow. So I would love more people to connect with me and like me help them write their book and go through the process. Since Costa Rica, I've ghostwritten 4 books for other people, but I've started to guide other people through the memoir writing process, which I absolutely love. It's like shepherding their story into the world and like seeing all of these insights that people are able to create for themselves whenever they look back at the defining moments of their life. So there's that. And then I see it also as like my contribution to like the healing and raising the collective consciousness and being a lighthouse for people in the heart of like depression or darkness or grief, loss, pain, chaos. If they're going through any of that, I feel like it can serve as that. And then, I've had a few like TV interview spots come up, just the enhanced ability to spread my message and work and connect with others. I feel like this whole journey has been about creating intimacy for myself and with others. Um, and yeah, it's been beautiful so far. And if I could continue that and use it as a springboard for that, perfecto.
So I love that you refer to a lighthouse, that you see
Mm.
yourself as a lighthouse. Why why a lighthouse? Why that? Because that's a great visual.
Yeah, I had seen that somewhere before. And then also in Costa Rica, it really felt like my story just kind of came full circle and like it was very clear. And I think I had maybe voiced that to one person. And then I was sitting at this Airbnb hotel thing, and I was like looking out over the water, and this like circling light, yeah, through the dark, just like it came, kept going around and around. I'm like, no way.
Mm,
At the moment that I feel like, this is where my story ends and this new chapter begins, I see this lighthouse in the distance, and it's very symbolic for me. And then
yeah.
also, I just think of, a ship trying to come to harbor. This is what worked for me. And so it can be that guiding post and guide light for others that are navigating turbulent waters.
Yeah, it's a great warning sign too, right? For
Mm-hmm.
sailors to avoid certain areas.
Yeah.
You come
Yeah.
too close, you're going to wreck, so that's kind of there to help as like a cautionary tale,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, had this lighthouse not been there, you might end up on the rocks, crashing, whatever,
Yeah.
right? So you are that for people,
Yeah.
cautionary tale that, hey, if you go down this path, you can survive, you survived, but
Mm-hmm.
you can also avoid maybe some pain in life by maybe not doing some of these things, right?
Yeah. Or by implementing some of the, by connecting to yourself, or by having a little grace for yourself, compassion. That's one of the biggest things too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing, I've had one other ghostwriter on the podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
he very plainly explained that he can't talk in detail about what he's written, but the process of being a ghostwriter and writing
Mm-hmm.
on behalf of somebody else, helping them organize their thoughts, their words, and presenting something for them. Tell me about
Mm-hmm.
ghostwriting a little bit. Why ghostwriting for you, and what it means to you to help people write?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I just love stories. So I'm like, if there's a way that I can make stories and words and writing my path, part of my path, then fantastic. So after I came back from Costa Rica, I like basically I had no intention on ghostwriting. I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. But someone had asked me, they're like, have you ever thought about this? And instead of being like knee-jerkingly resistant, no, closing down, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stay open. So a friend of mine who has a publishing company said that he needed some more ghostwriters and offered me a spot to come on. I was like, this is great. Fantastic. Yes, I've always wanted to be paid for writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so basically, we would outline together, get their key message down. And this all of the outlining and then all of the interviews after the outlining session would be recorded on Zoom or similar, and then I would transcribe it. So like when I would transcribe it, I'm able to like pull from their voice and connect the dots and let it flow. I've done a few different books in like the mindset, personal development space and the health space. I did a collection of short stories for this nonprofit. And then my favorite, of course, is going to be this memoir that I helped this gentleman write. And it was just really cool to, interview his family members and get their perspectives and interview his business associates and get all these like different viewpoints
Mm-hmm.
into this central message. Um,
That sounds really interesting. And the one thing I remember hearing from the other ghostwriter as well was he would interview somebody and they would give them facts and details, but they'd be out of order. So they wouldn't be in
mm-hmm,
a timeline. And he'd have to kind of, okay, so this happened before or after this? And they'd be
mm-hmm,
like, oh, no, that was before. Oh, okay, so we'll have to move that here and I'll have to move that here. Right. But
mm-hmm.
just capturing their voice, I think, is the biggest thing, right? It's almost like sending somebody else on a date for you, and they're going to do the date and you're going to stay home and your ghostwriter is going to go do all the work. Right? It's like, but you have to speak for them. You have to capture their
Mm-hmm.
voice. Right. And I guess there's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of pride too, I guess, when you see the book or hear about the book and you're like, yeah, I know about that book.
Yeah.
That was me. right?
Yeah, really cool. Um, Super cool experience. I mean, the one that the memoir, he gave me an acknowledgement. And so there's like a little more tie to like the help behind of
Okay,
his,
good.
thoughts
Yeah,
and
yeah.
feelings and stuff like that. But it is really cool to see it, to see their vision come to life and to watch like as it unfolds, the animation and the light behind their eyes. And, you know, some people didn't have like maybe as much time to invest into the book writing process,
Yeah.
but and still having that on the other side is really neat to help support their visions and messages and organizations. Or he wanted to leave his life lessons and legacy behind for his children, which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that the relationship with the dad is so important and special to me. And so to have contributed to that for him in some way, it was beautiful.
Sweet. Okay. So, um, as a new author, as you know, you produce your book, you get it out there, and it's like, now what?
Mm-hmm.
What are, if you have there's listeners today that they're authors and they're like, okay, Kristin, my book's coming out. What do I do? How do I build a
Mm-hmm.
community? Is there a platform that you like better than another platform, social media wise, that you're seeing good traction, good engagement from an audience? Any
Mm-hmm.
suggestions for people who have a new book, how to get out and promote?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would start creating an email list and I would like let people in on the behind the scenes leading up to the book launch date if you have that time available. So maybe if you have some bonus chapters or some extra content that you could offer in exchange for like the email or support, that would be awesome. Like I offered a couple of bonus chapters for people that joined my email list, and it was beautiful. I started creating that list probably several months before leading up to it, on Instagram, Facebook, just kind of like hopping on stories or making a post and creating a list that way. And then also, I would say consistency of posting online. Not everybody is going to see your message every time. So the
Yeah.
more you put it out there, the more likely it is to gain some traction. I love TikTok, but I haven't used it as much. I think they have a great algorithm though to
Yeah.
reach a wider range of people. Podcast interviews, yeah, line those
Mm-hmm.
up. Reach out to local. I had a connection with a local station, but you could totally reach out to like a TV station and be like, hey, do you have a lifestyle or spot where you have local authors on, and see if you can forge a connection that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, like I hear a lot of great things from authors on TikTok, just how they're rewarding creators, and it's different.
Mm,
It's very different than your traditional like Instagram or whatever. 1% of your audience sees your post. It's like, why
mm-hmm.
am I spending all this time creating content and a fraction of my
Yes.
audience is actually seeing it? But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, I spoke to an author yesterday and she, in 5 to 6 weeks, one of her TikTok went viral and she's got like 7 million views on one post. It's like, how does that happen? Right. You
Yeah.
just don't know. So
I
like,
know if we knew, I'm like, how to give us the
yeah,
secret
yeah, give
sauce.
me it. Come on. What is this? What are we doing? Okay. So before we close off, the title of the book, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. Tell me why
Mm-hmm.
soul is a key word in your title and for your book.
Because I think that we can have, I believe we are a soul having a human experience. And so I believe we can have a fun, playful human evolution and an expansive soul growth experience too. So for me, it's about the inner, now how do we integrate those two? I had done, the original title of my book was called The Scenic Route Home. And I did this titling workshop and they're like, that's probably what it felt like to write it. And I was like, yes, it did. And then they're like, well, tell us a little bit about it. And I had done a book proposal because had thought about going the more traditional publishing route at first. So I did this book proposal and really got to know like all of the ins and outs of my book. And I was like, well, it's like the sex and the drugs part, and then it's tapping into the soul. And she's like, well, there's your book title right there, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. And then the more we talked, the more it came about. And then the subtitle, Finding Grace in the Shadow, is like really what I, was hoping I am hoping to impart on the different readers. Like if there's one lesson that they could walk away with, it'd be to give themselves a little grace. So whenever I told her that, I got teary eyed. And so that's another, I'm like, okay, I'm following my feelings a lot.
I sense that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that will never lead you wrong. Right.
Yeah.
No.
I think that it won't. Just continuing to check in moment to moment. Yeah.
Okay. So, before we close off, what's the best way for people to find the book, connect with you, Kristin? What does all that look like? How do we do that?
Yes. Let's Amazon is going to be the easiest place to find the book, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. You can also find it at barnesandnoble.com or order it from any local bookstore if you would like. You can find me at my website, kristinbirdwell.com, and Instagram, Kristin Birdwell and a little underscore.
Cool. And there's a potential podcast coming too, right?
There is a potential podcast coming. It's coming. It's just, it's a slower birthing process than I had anticipated. But look for that in August, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. Okay.
And that'll be great. Awesome. So if you haven't had enough Kristin Birdwell today, Kristin's also going to jump over on Dad Space, our other podcast, and we're going to talk a little different over there. So you're always welcome to join Kristin. If you need more Kristin in your life, we got you covered. Jump over to Dad Space, another podcast we do, and continue the conversation with Kristin over there. Kristin, thank you so much for making time. Like I said at the beginning, you are not a difficult guest. You are a wonderful guest, and so happy to have you on. It's great.
I appreciate it. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Okay, guys, so go over to Dad Space and check out that podcast. If you need more Kristin in your life, go buy the book, wait for the podcast. Do it all. Support Kristin and her wonderful, colorful mic. Awesome, Kristin. Thanks. Hi, guys. This is Dave from Living the Next Chapter, a podcast designed to connect authors and audiences. We're always on the lookout for our next interview. If you're an author, a publisher, and you have a book, whether you're just starting, whether you're halfway through writing, or it's all done and you want to tell the world, that's why we're here at Living the Next Chapter. Get in touch with us through livingthenextchapter.com, contact us, and let's set up some time together to discuss your book, to discuss your project, and how we can get you on the show. My name is Dave, and I would love to speak to you. So go to livingthenextchapter.com, and let's get over there together and discuss all the great things that you're up to as an author, as a publisher, and let's grow your audience together. Join us on livingthenextchapter.com for great authors and an audience that's eager to hear about what you're up to as an author and a publisher. Contact us today and let's get your book out in front of others. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.